Abi. Hi.
Hello.
You are a qualified accountant, author, presenter. You're also one of the leading finance content creators in the UK with well over 300,000 followers across platforms whilst running your business, Elent, which teaches kids in school around the UK the lessons that we were never taught about money. So I cannot think of anyone better today to talk to about money in the next generation. So welcome to Money and Us.
Thank you so much, Anna.
It's really good to have you here. So we're going to start, as we always do, with a little stat, because we're going to do fact or fiction. And I've asked you to prepare some things in your area of expertise, which is the next generation and finance. Hit me with it, and I'm going to do my best guess and I'm planning to win, by the way. So I'm playing to win here.
So I'm going to do 2 truths and a lie, taking a kind of side on it. So youth unemployment in London is around 26% currently. The average millionaire is around 55, and only 1% of millionaires are under 35. And then the final one is that actually 80% of students claim that financial or the lack of financial understanding they get at school leads to problems with their mental health.
Oh, that's good. I think I already know what it is. Which ones are true? I think it's the first and last are true, and the one in the middle is the lie. Is it not? So let's go through them. So 26% of what was the age group you said?
So of Gen Z, so youth unemployment is at 26% in London. So it's around 16% in the UK, but 26% in London, which is actually scary. And
scary.
I'm really, really concerned that that's going to rise in the next few years. The average millionaire is age 55, and only 1% of millionaires are under 35. I think for the next generation, they have this really weird, distorted view that there are tons of millionaires in their age bracket, and that actually you come out of university, sell your first startup, and you're suddenly a millionaire.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I couldn't find the data on this, so I made it up. But I wish someone had looked into the next generation's concern with their lack of financial literacy and how it impacts their mental health. Because I know from meeting the next generation, the financial worries they have are impacting their mental health right now. But there isn't, annoyingly, any stats, so I just made it up. So technically it's the lie. But I don't know, I backed the stat.
We do see a lot of stats around how it affects their work life, their earning potential, lots of other stats, but specifically to mental health, I think somebody should find that out and do a study.
For that generation, it's so important. They've gone through COVID, they've gone through, they're going through this Middle East conflict right now. They're going through so much, and finance, it plays a core part in that, and they're not taught about it properly.
Yeah. So let me give everyone listening just a little bit of a kind of picture of where we're going to go today, because we're going to cover a lot of ground. And I know people listening will either be in the age brackets that we're going to be talking about, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and probably not Gen Alpha listening, probably not. But we also will have a lot of people listening that are parents and are thinking about their kids and thinking about challenges they're going to be facing going into the workforce, just going into adult life. And I've been so excited to talk to you because you are so well versed in this, because you literally work with young people, you teach young people financial literacy. So we are going to go into some of the challenges that young people are facing. We're going to get to grips with some of that, because I think as a parent myself, arming ourselves with the information is really, really important, and what we can do. But we're not going to sort of stay there. We are going to lead to some solutions and some hope at the end. But first of all, I want to know more about you, because we do know each other a bit, but there's so many things I want to understand better. And people listening will be like, tell me more about Abi, because you sound like a fascinating person. You certainly are. So let's talk about you a little bit and understand how you got here. So tell me a little bit, what was life growing up like for you? And looking back now, because you've now got a business, you're, social media stuff, you work with government, you're on TV. Could you have seen that coming, looking back at your life growing up?
No, I was the shy one in my family.
Were you?
Technically, if you were putting us in metrics of confidence, I probably would still be considered one of the shy ones. I have a very confident family, really. My mum is and was a hairdresser, and when I was very young, I was very aware that she was working either at home or in a salon. She worked all the time. For me, I never really knew about 9 to 5. It just wasn't really a thing in my household. And my dad was a builder, but again, he worked for himself, and he used to do single story extensions and would do, some work around the corner. So he would work all the time. And he is also quite neurospicy. Obviously back then he had no idea, so he just was very on it all the time, liked routine, and his routine was just to work all the time.
Okay.
So I grew up with full awareness of like, if you wanted to work really hard, you would like do well. I went to like a mixed state school early on, and then basically my parents, because they both left school when they were like 14, 15. They were
Wow.
obsessed with like me having
Yeah.
like this idea of a perfect education. I don't necessarily know if it even exists, even if you're talking like state versus private schools, but I ended up going to an all-girls school midway through my kind of junior school life. And it had such an impact on me because I remember being a very confident young girl when I was in that era. I spoke quite differently at the time because also my parents are both have very like South London or kind of East London, most people will hear accents. So I had very like East London accent as a very young girl. And I listen back to videos and it does make me laugh because I will say things. I'm trying to think of something I said, but it's a lot higher pitch and a lot more like aggressive on the ear, some might say.
Do you revert back when you go home a little bit?
Yeah. If I'm around my mum or my aunties, it's sort of like, oh my God, how are you doing? And everything gets really high and everything's so much easier. And when I talk like that, it's really, anyway, we won't go.
Well, this is when my kids are growing up there. So this is the vibe at home.
Yeah.
So it's all good. It's all good.
And actually, yeah. Anyway, so I was a very confident young little girl. And then I went to this all-girls school and I did lose a bit of my confidence because I felt like because I wasn't stereotypically clever, i.e. I wasn't very good at passing exams, if I'm honest.
Wow.
I felt like a bit of a failure, but I was so aware that my parents were like working so hard to make sure I could stay at that school that obviously that kind of kept me going a lot of the time. I then went like past that. I knew that I was going to have to get into university. And that's where I kind of discovered, just before university, I kind of discovered what I look back now and realized was like my entrepreneurial spirit.
Oh, go on.
But I did things like I trained and doing things like I trained to be a spray tan girl, basically. So I did spray tans. It was the height of Towie, like the only way is Essex. I learned how to do a lot of like beauty treatments.
These are things I don't know. This is brilliant.
It's so weird. And so a lot of my last few years of school, I was doing things like spray tans for like my friends, and I was making like £15 there, 20 quid there. It was all like very easy. Well, not easy, but you know, I was learning about entrepreneurship, but I didn't really think about it because I had this view from my parents where it was like, well, you just go out and work. That is it.
Yeah.
And because neither of them did 9 to 5, I didn't really think about going and getting like a normal person job in like a cafe. I was like, well, I'm just going to do this creatively and do it from home like my parents do.
Yeah.
And then, got to university, did the same there because I was in North Wales and there wasn't spray tans going on. And so I basically brought that to there and did quite well. And so managed to like not get myself in a ton of debt. I wouldn't say I made more money than I spent. I just sort of kept myself going through uni. And then, when I left university, my career, I knew I went to university knowing I wanted to do a degree that would take me somewhere. That was another mentality I had as well.
Yeah.
That if I was going to uni, it had to lead to something.
Yeah.
Which is probably I'm quite neurospicy if other people haven't picked this up by now. And it's quite one of my like tisms is like, I need direction and I need a goal and I need to know where I'm going. And that was a big part for me. I knew I wanted to do something after. And so I did accountancy at university. You do not need to do it at university to do it after. You really don't. If anything, I wish I'd done something else. Might be more interesting. And also I was only one of 4 girls in my year
Were
to
you
graduate. Yeah, because accountancy was so, to be honest, finance in general was so male heavy. Like I did some courses with a lot of other girls like marketing and things like that, but accountancy and banking, which was my official degree, I think I was only one of 4 girls. It was so frustrating. And I think that's, again, there were times in my life that I can vividly remember seeing inequality gaps. And I was like, that was one of them. And I was like, how ridiculous. And I remember going out of my way to like wear a pink dress, even though it did not go with my uni colours, and like Louboutins that did not go with the dress. But like I had to be myself, or what I thought was myself. Yeah. And then how far shall I keep going?
Well, you go, because this is what I find really interesting is you've got these 2 parallel lines going on of entrepreneurial spirit and also that's just the culture of your home and that's what you knew growing up, which a lot of people don't have access to. And we get, I know we'll come on to this later, but like a lot of us do that conveyor belt thing, which is like you go to school, you go to uni, you get the job and it's like douche, douche, douche. Whereas you've had both things going on at once, this sort of understanding of I need a goal, I need to be going somewhere, I need a career. but I also have been brought up in this home that is like, we've just done it our way and we
Mm.
figured it out, which I find really fascinating. It explains why I can see why you're doing what you're doing now and doing it so well, is because you need to have those two parts. What was it like graduating as an accountant, then getting into the workforce, going into to work like 9 to 5, that life for you, as somebody who's kind of had that entrepreneurial background?
It was quite difficult, actually. I think my parents, to also put in some perspective, like my parents aren't entrepreneurs. They wouldn't call themselves that at all.
Right.
My mum is a hairdresser. She just works for herself. And my dad is a builder who works for himself. They've done well, but like my dad would have absolutely no idea what you were saying if you asked him about raising money or like VCs. He would look at you with complete confusion. And so would my mum. My mum really doesn't understand what she is. But I look at them both and they both just work really hard. And for me, like I think my parents both said, like, you know, always try and work for yourself as well. And I think, to be honest, if there was a therapist looking in on that conversation, it's because they're both neurospicy and really have to work for themselves because they're not very good at working for other people. But actually, it was a skill that I learned really early on that was a possibility. So yeah, when I went and worked, so my first job out of university, I worked in an accountancy practice, which is why I then started the ACA. And I really enjoyed the kind of going into London. I worked behind what was at that time, it's now IKEA, but it was Topshop in Oxford Circus. And so like every day I would like get dressed up and like go to the office. And to be honest, at the beginning of my career, I was just a glorified coffee maker. And I just moved numbers around on an Excel spreadsheet and like maybe run some payroll. It was like very light touch. And I won't lie, I got really bored quite fast. And I lived for the walk around Topshop at lunchtime and seeing my friends after work because I felt so grown up.
Yeah.
But I lasted about a year and I got really bored. And so I had a very early midlife crisis.
Very early midlife crisis.
At 21. I basically announced to my mum that I was quitting and I was going to be a yoga instructor.
This is so good.
Honestly, they were livid. And I was like, I'm going to go to Australia, train as a yoga instructor, and then come back and just be this.
Yeah.
I think now I'm like
bendy adult.
I don't know who I thought it was. Anyway, I went to Australia. Literally the day I arrived, I got on this boat to do this boat tour, which if you're ever going to Australia, do not do that because you have severe jet lag and then with motion sickness.
Oh yeah. Not a good combo.
Anyway, I did that and I sat next to this woman who basically was like holding my hair back whilst I was throwing up. And I was like, and I ended up chatting to her. I was like, oh, what do you do? She's like, oh, I'm an accountant. I was like, oh. And it was like the universe giving me a sign that was like, look, you can come over to Australia, but you're going to have to go back and actually be an accountant.
Right.
Which was so annoying. So I did come back and I did, I had a few career, like mini careers where I like worked in finance in different companies. And then eventually I found Condé Nast. So I worked for Vogue effectively.
Amazing.
And I remember starting that job and telling a very ex-boyfriend, I was like, I'm never going to leave. Like, this is my forever job.
Wow. Off to Australia.
Yeah. Well, it was because it was Vogue. I was like, oh my gosh, I've made it. No. And I think I stayed there a bit too long because something that I always tell young people as well, like you are allowed to change, but when you're in your early 20s, it feels like a failure to change because you've not committed to something long enough. But I knew that that company wasn't right for me. Anyway, I left, started at Hearst, which is basically an identical company. And I did accountancy there as well until I left, basically.
And that's okay. So that only brings us up to this, getting your accountancy exams, and then Elent happened.
Yes.
So how do you go from I'm an accountant to I'm going to start teaching kids in school about money? And what happened? Like, where did that idea even come from?
Do you know what? Just pure naivety that it would, like, that. Why wouldn't it work?
Right.
I started running sessions when I was at Hearst. I was like a management accountant, effectively helping various teams like understand their own finances, and I loved my meetings because I used to meet with all these wonderful women in the building and some men, but like at that industry, it was Glossy Magazine World, so there's a lot of women. And I would explain to them why they needed to get their budgets in and why they needed to accurately report their actuals and things like that. And I just loved it. I loved communicating with them about finance. And I just didn't realize I had quite a good rapport with them. And I started being the one that everyone wanted to come to if they wanted to speak to the finance department. And so I ran a session like once teaching some of the girls about pay slips, and we had this like oversubscription of people that wanted to come.
Wow.
And then the company were a bit dubious of it. They were like, it's not really our wheelhouse. Like, we shouldn't really be doing this. And so it kind of sparked something in me where I was like, do you know what? If I want to go and do something, I've qualified, I've been at Hearst for 4 years, like now's the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of, I remember saying to my boss, I was like, I would like to take a sabbatical so I can figure out if I can do this. And he rejected it and was like, no. And I was like, oh, well, I've got to quit then. And he was so shocked. He was like, what? And I was like, well, I should just do it.
Yeah.
And I quit, and I had really supportive-ish people around me. And in the 3 months probation, I like made sure like on the weekends and the evenings, I'd started like putting the feelers out that I now had a company called Elent, and we now taught finance in schools. And just, and then I got a school in December, be like, come in January. We've got like, 400 students. You can talk to them. And I charged like nothing at the time. And I just turned up and taught. And that, I don't think that school, even to this day, know that they were like my very first school.
Yeah.
They put me in front of like 400 kids. I was petrified. I was so sweaty. I remember not sleeping like 3 days before because I was so worried. And it's kind of sparked something in me where I was like, oh, I love this. Like, you can have such a quick impact on 400 lives effectively, giving them something that actually everyone wants. And then, just spiraled from there, really.
And you've gone on to teach all around the UK. I mean, I feel like every time I see you about to get in a car to go to some like random location, like somewhere, not random, but
no, it is true. Like, especially when you're like, because I think a lot of people think that we just teach in London.
Yeah.
Sometimes that would be easier, but we don't. We teach all over. And so sometimes you'll see me getting in my car. Like, a 4-hour drive nowadays doesn't really worry me because I'm like, oh, okay, we got to do what we got to do. And I always, especially if it's to teach in a school, I can say it with such confidence, and I do say this to everyone. It's my favorite part of my job. I love it. It's like where I get my why, and so I don't mind doing it because it the drive is a bit long, and the drive home is probably a bit long. But actually, when I'm there, I'm like, this is why I do it. We do have more teachers now, thankfully, in Elent. So if there is one that's like outside of my remit or I can't make it doesn't rely just on me now. Thank goodness. But for the time, like, there have been times where I have had to do I'm trying to think of my further school. I did one in Newcastle. That was far. But you just do what you got to do, don't you, to get the schools ready.
But we have this thing, I think, nowadays that is kind of widely acknowledged. I think everyone agrees on this. Mm-hmm. We should have been taught money at school. Mm-hmm. You're actually doing it. What is it? Tell me about what we don't understand about that, because you're actually on the ground teaching kids, getting into classrooms and being like, okay, this is what you need to know. Mm-hmm. If it was kind of like a really easy thing to make happen, surely lots of people would be doing it and it would just be done. Yeah. Tell me what it's really like.
Do you know what? It's so difficult because schools don't have enough time. They don't have enough time. There's a curriculum they have to facilitate, whether they are a state or a private school or a religious school. They've all got their own curriculums that they have to fit into a certain period of time in the day, in the month, in the year. And finance isn't part of that curriculum. Mm-hmm. So shoehorning it in has to be at the sacrifice of something else, effectively. Then you've got to work out on the monetary elements, because I do it. And I do it because I love it, but I also have to get paid. And especially now I have a team and I have other teachers that come in, it is their right to be paid for their time. And so therefore I have to charge schools, and schools go, we just don't have the budget because this isn't something that we budget for. So that's the second element that's really difficult. And then I think also it's, what do you teach? And for the teachers inside the schools, it's like there's abundance of lessons you can teach. And so it's almost, it's that jam jar thing where too much choice. Mm-hmm. And so they teach nothing because they don't know what to teach. Whereas I go in and say, right, let's do like pay slips, investing and pensions. And I'll teach it. I'm qualified. I know what I'm talking about. I can be unbiased. And I am also not like a million years older than some of the students. So therefore, they don't feel like they're just being lectured at by what they stereotypically think of as finance anyway. Yep. So it just, it seems to work. But I think one of the biggest problems is time in the curriculum and budget. And then the teacher's like response to it as well. Because I think sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes schools have this idea that because they're a school that they should get things for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's trying to rewrite that narrative to be like, if I could, I would, trust me. Like if I was massive and I was making so much money that I could just send everyone out, I would. And I'd love to get to that stage. But at the beginning, you do have to invest in it.
Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest things, is to convince schools that actually you do need to invest in this. And we are really good. And we have such a great turnover rate, i.e. we've only ever lost, of the schools we've taught, I think we've only ever lost one school out of like hundreds of schools that we've taught. They all repeat every year.
Yeah.
And the only reason that school didn't repeat is because they basically hired someone to come in and teach finance, because they were like, our kids love this, we're going to do it. And I was like, great, fantastic. And so that was the only reason. Whereas every other school, they rebook every year, and so they get the value, but it's getting them on that first session that can be really difficult.
So tell me about that. Has anything surprised you about what actually resonates with the kids? Because there will be people listening going, I don't even know where to start with my kids. I don't even know, like maybe teachers are listening and they're thinking, where do you even like shoehorn this stuff in? How do we even begin this process? What has been the standout things that you just go like, this is just connecting, this is making a difference, I can see what this is doing?
So the obvious one of the things that they're most interested in is investing.
Really?
They love a bit of investing because they see it all over social media. They see it as this like surefire way to make money, and you have to really curb the enthusiasm on that. That's the only one where you have to curb it a little bit and be like, can we just take some of that enthusiasm and put it on pay slips? Because they're not really interested in that. But investing, they are bothered about, and they really care about, and they think that's the success. And I have to constantly rewrite the narrative of, but investing really is like putting the roof on your house. We're starting on the grounds. Like we have to lay the ground level first and then build up. Because if you're trying to put the roof on something that doesn't exist, it's just all going to crumble if something goes wrong. And actually so their enthusiasm, definitely, it doesn't really matter the year group. You say the word investing, and like, especially in this age, they're like, oh, I know what that is, I want to talk about it. But then closely followed by that, some of the stuff that surprises me is often they want to understand about buying a house, and they want to understand about pensions. Do you know what I can say with such confidence that like I've never gone to a school where the kids didn't want me there. And I know a lot of people that go into schools and teach lots of different things. And sometimes I'll hear from teachers, they'll say, oh gosh, like it's like pulling teeth, the kids don't respond to me, they don't really want to engage, they were bored, they got their phone out. I've never ever had that experience at a single school. Like year nines, won't lie, quite tricky. They're in a different era. Year nines, really, I know it sounds like I'm picking on them, but it's every school. They all think they're unique, and they're not. Year nines are, because do you know what it is? It's that bell curve of interest. Like year 7 and 8, you're still really early on in secondary school, and so you're trying to be respectful and prove yourself, and like you would never talk back, that kind of element. But and also you're interested because you're like, oh, this is like something that's going to happen in my future. And then the other end, like year 11, 12, 13, it's about to happen to you, this finance stuff. So you're really interested again because you're like, okay, this is actually in my very near future. But year 9 and 10, and specifically year 9, the hormones have kicked in. They really know themselves, apparently. And there's a lot of like conflicting interests as well, because you are battling with the fact that they're sat next to you, possibly someone else's boyfriend that's just split up with them, and then this friend that they've just fallen out with. Their brain is going, I've got an exam in 2 weeks that's going to dictate the rest of my life. It's not, but they think that because they're in year 9. And it's so funny because I remember being year 9 and thinking that. And they're the hardest sometimes because they can be the most arrogant and the most like, I don't care, I know this already. And I'm like, oh, okay. And the added element that it feels too far away for them. They're like, oh, it's not happening to me in the next year, so why should I care? They're some of the hardest, I think. But like I would say, I've never had a school that didn't want me. And I always questions as well, like we get to the end, I'm like, any questions? And then the teachers always say to me the same thing. They're like, we've never had so many questions from the kids, like they've never been this engaged, which I love because they really care. And also they always inevitably ask me like, how do I do my hair? Or like, what do I make? Like, what money do I make? Or like, what's Keir Starmer like? And so those sorts of questions I will always answer. And so then really they feel like they have that relationship with me. And so then they feel like they know me. And I get a lot of, joy out of the fact that most of them then follow me on Instagram and will like message me and feel comfortable enough to be like, I don't understand this. Can you explain it?
Yeah.
And that's why another reason really I do social media is for them to go somewhere, because it's not just about teaching them at school and then being like, good luck, because we know statistically as well, they're not going to retain everything I teach them.
No.
I wish they were, but they're not. And so I need to give them somewhere to go. So if they've forgotten what I said about premium bonds, they can come back and relearn.
And we've barely scratched the surface on like the stuff you're doing now, and your amazing accounts on socials, all the work you're doing, like you've mentioned Keir Starmer, just casually interviewing him every now and then, and all these things. And you've gone on to written a book as well, the Money Manual, which everyone should get, because it is literally the thing everyone needs to have, isn't it, on their shelf? That's just like, it's kind of like literally what you're saying, of that I need to be able to come back to this and I need to be able to dip into it. And so I want to talk about coming away from like, I guess you've already said that there's a real interest and an appetite. And I think as someone, I'm now in my 40s, I find that really encouraging that there's an appetite with the younger generation, because we're all like, we should have learned at school. Do they want to learn? It sounds like they actually do. Great. Really, really cool. But you're talking to them all the time and you're so aware of the challenges that young people are facing right now. And I think a lot of parents are looking down the line thinking, goodness me, the world they're about to inherit, this is pretty scary stuff. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that, about some of the things facing the next generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, the biggest challenges coming their way financially. Talk to me about that. What would you say are the top things right now that you're thinking, we need to be talking about this, we need to have this on our radar? Come on, guys, let's get clued up on it.
Yeah, the reason I did this is because I think I looked at it. I remember when I was 18 thinking that financial education wasn't taught at school. And I was like, it's so weird. Like, why had no one teaching me about my payslip or anything like that? And then I got to my late 20s when I was at Hurst and leaving to do Elent. And I was like, I just don't want to look back. And so I have a goddaughter who is like 16. And I was like, I don't want her to like have left school and be like, why did you do nothing about this? And also some of my best friends were having babies. And I was like, I don't want them to, I know they wouldn't specifically come to me, maybe they would have, but like, and said like, why didn't any of you do anything about this? Like, you guys are all talking about it, but you're not actually doing it. And it's why I just went, right, do you know what? I'm just going to go into schools. I'm just going to do it because we all talk about it. I'm just going to give it a go, see what happens. And I would say the most prevalent things that we need to be talking to the next generation about is even the mental health element of financial literacy, is like understanding that, you know, and not understanding finance can have such a direct impact on your mental health. So much of understanding finance is your responsibility. I think a lot of us try and pass it off and say, well, you know, my parents should have taught me or my school should have taught me. Okay, but they didn't. So what do we do now?
Right.
And also understanding how to build stability first, like what you need to do. You don't need to understand investing first. You need to really understand how to build like an emergency fund pot, understand what your net worth is, like what's coming in, what's going out, all of those really boring basics. They're probably the priorities. But I have to, basically, when I go into schools, what I do is it's like the Trojan horse effect. I like go in telling them I'm going to teach them about investing, and then quickly I'll like throw in pay slips, and then I go, oh, and pensions. Okay, now I'll give you the horse. And that's what I try and do. I'm like, look, investing. Oh, whilst you're here, can I just talk to you about your payslip? Whilst you're here, can I just explain how pensions work? And I do that. And then at the end, because they want to stay, because they want to learn what bull and bear is, and they want to understand what an ETF is, I've got them. So that would probably be what I think is the most important right now, is like the mental health element, the understanding your base numbers, and understanding that everything is like, all of this is actually your responsibility. I wish it wasn't. Like, it's too young. 18 is too young to put this on to them, but it's happening. So we just got to get our heads around it and start supporting them.
Tell me more about the mental health side of things, because that is something I love to unpack, because I guess it's got that kind of spider diagram effect. There's like loads of ways that it touches our lives with our finances. Where do you see that happening? Can you join the dots between not understanding about money and the mental health side for young people?
Yeah, well, I'm not a psychologist, but specifically for young people, I see the fear they have around the life that we're all kind of setting out for them. And it is our responsibility. We are setting this life out for them in our voting decisions, in our everyday decisions of what we teach our kids. And they're going, oh, am I going to be able to afford to buy a house? Am I going to be able to afford to save? Is there going to be a job for me? You know, all of those things. And I hear them asking these questions all the time. And I think it's our responsibility as adults to help them through that. And the mental health impact, we know it as adults, when we're worried about our finances, it does impact our sleep. It does impact what we do and how we think and feel. And it also changes the narrative that comes out of our mouth. And that directly impacts the next generation's narrative. Because as you know, I don't have any children, but your kids are sponges. They will. And also what I love sometimes is some of my best friends' babies sound like them. And they go and they'll repeat verbatim phrases that their mums and dads use. It's not uncommon. But what they forget is that they're going to continue to do that with everything. And that also means money. So if you're saying in front of your kids things like, we can't afford this, or money's the root of all evil, or gosh, I'm trying to think of loads of examples, investing, not for me. I hear mum say this all the time. They're like, oh, I'll invest for my kids, but I'm not investing for myself. Your kid's hearing that and goes, well, then I shouldn't invest for myself. I should only invest for my child, because they are sponges. And they're not wrong. They're just hearing what you've said. I teach in junior schools and I love it. But they are, and I would say this to any parent of a junior school child, they tell their teachers and people that come into their school everything.
Great.
It's honestly, I'll go in, I'm like, so whose parents are in or who knows something about finance? And then I'll get so many hands up being like, my daddy is in finance. And I'm like, okay, what do they do? And they'll say things like, he earns loads of money. And I'm like, great, love that. And then because obviously they're like, it's competition, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then they're all putting their hands up. They're like, my mummy's friend's dad also works in finance. You're like, okay, cool. Well, I've seen a 50p. Anyway, it goes you really have to work with junior schools. You have to work on statements and questions. Anyway, I would say with junior schools, it's so prevalent. The things that come out of their mouth is directly what you're saying. So yes, mental health is a huge element, but please be aware of the word you're using, because it's going to directly impact them and their mind, their money behavior. Because it's just, it just will.
I find that quite challenging, because people my age, we're stressed.
Yeah.
We're stressed about money. We're trying to figure it out. We're looking at jobs, we're looking at savings, we're looking at investing, we're thinking, how do I do it all? How do I make this all work? A lot of people are really struggling financially right now. So what would be your sort of take on that? How can parents, older people, do a better job of kind of not passing that on?
Yeah, I know. And I don't want to come across as tactless, because we are in a cost of living crisis and it is impossible to be perfect all the time. But just especially in those younger ears, just be really careful. And if you hear even your parents talking to your kids around about money that you don't like, do pick them up on it, because like I said, they take noise in, they process it, and then they keep it, because that's all they know. Don't forget, they're working from a blank page. As an adult, if someone says to me investing is wrong, I look at my investing page in my brain and go, well, no, because I have all of this data to prove that it works for me.
Love that.
Whereas when you are a child, you go, investing is wrong, and you go to your investing page and it's a new page, because no one has ever talked about investing before. And so you go, right, well, investing is wrong. And then you park that in your little case study of life. And then when someone talks about investing, you bring that out. And if someone goes, oh no, investing's really good, you go, well, no, because my page says
this one time.
Exactly, this one time, I got told it was wrong. And therefore, you're going to have to really battle to tell me that it's right, because I only have one page of data here, and that page says one thing. And it actually came from my mum. And my mum is the oracle of truth. And therefore, that's it. And I try and explain this so often to parents that it's the younger they are, sometimes often we think we shouldn't be teaching because they're too young. But it's sometimes the best times to just be like, if your kids hear something and you don't agree with it, saying what do you think about that? Let's discuss that. I know it's a really big subject. You don't have to understand it all right now. You don't have to explain to 6-year-olds what ETFs are, but you can explain that, yes, fine, you did overhear Uncle what's his face say that investing is wrong for him, but that doesn't mean it's wrong for everyone.
Right.
And things like that. That's what I would say to adults. I'm not saying it's your responsibility to start teaching them compound interest at 4 years old, but it is your responsibility to try and dictate the narrative, because you are working with a really fresh sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And actually they're so vulnerable. But yeah, that's probably where I would start.
I love that. The fresh sheet of paper thing is really helpful. I just like to visualize.
Yeah.
What would you like to hear coming out of the mouths of some of the people you teach that has been a positive thing? If you were to like write it yourself and you'd be like, parents, if you could get your kids to parrot this in my classroom, what are some of the things you'd want them to be saying? Just off the top of your head. I know it's like there's probably a million.
Do you know the word that came to mind when you said, what do you want kids to think? It's just abundance.
Wow.
So many kids just think with such a scarcity mindset, and it's because of their parents. And don't get me wrong, I'm at this as well. Like, I get to points sometimes where I know I'm speaking with like a scarcity mindset. But it makes me really sad when I hear a kid talking with a scarcity mindset, because I'm like, your world is so new. You've got so much capability. And I'll hear kids be like, oh, I don't have enough. Oh, there's like, you'll never earn that. You'll never do this. And I'm like, what? Like, hold on. You've barely been on the planet. Like, give us all a second here. You don't know. You don't know anything yet. And I think I just love for the next generation to know. And I know it's really hard as parents and as adults, because we've had so many, so much of our life, we keep proving that there's scarcity. But, it'd be nice to hear that. And I am always super impressed when kids can tell me anything about the news. So if you are talking about news with your kids, it's really important. Again, don't necessarily need to be talking about Donald Trump and his tariffs.
Some of the bits were just kind of...
Yeah. But I am always really like, especially if I'm talking to a junior school kid and they are aware that like oil prices have gone up, and that means petrol prices have gone up. Great. That's a conversation you can have, and that's, I'm always really impressed / grateful when kids have that kind of conversation going on at home.
And in a safe environment as well, where you can like hash it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, this is so helpful. I'm literally going to go home and be thinking, right, blank piece of paper. Okay, what am I going to write on it today? This is great.
You have such a wide variety of age group as well with your 3 girls. So I know it is more difficult. The wider age, the harder it is actually.
Yeah, but it's you're right. It is like what they're hearing at home, they do parrot at school and outside of the home environment. And we just need to be really careful. And I think sometimes it, like as a parent, it is like about having a word with yourself and just being like, why do I think that? Why am I talking like that? Is that true? We try and avoid like never and always in our conversations at home. And it's like, again, for that reason, because like we never do this, we never have that. You always say this, you always just trying to keep away from that just gives a bit more, nuance and softens it all a little bit. Do the kids in the schools that you talk to talk about, because you mentioned it earlier, but I was like, do they actually talk about this, buying a house? Is that a thing that comes up?
Huge, actually upsettingly more than anything else, really, when it comes to like the next step. Yes, we talk about student loans, all that, but like they go like, how am I ever going to buy? And sometimes, especially if I'm talking in a specific school in a city, it is going to be like, do you want any school in the city? I'm like, well, if you want to live near here, you're being priced out very early on. And it's not always feasible. And how can you do it, especially when house prices are rising higher than wage prices at an extraordinary rate? And I would say we talk about it a lot. I do full sessions on how you buy a house, but obviously there's a huge element of the conversation, which is, but it is not a success metric. Owning a house does not make you successful. For some people, it's really important, and it's really important for them. They feel successful if they've done it. Fantastic. But for a lot of people, and in this modern society, it may actually not be successful. It may also not be worth it. The fact is, if you're not owning your house for more than a few years, you are probably going to lose money. You're also tying yourself to someone else if you buy it with another person, and that's very risky. There are parts of it that don't make complete sense. However, the problem narrative is we're still just in that generation where the parents of the kids did really well off of buying homes. My parents were in that. Like, my mum was a hairdresser in the 80s that was get that out. My mum was a hairdresser in the 80s, and she was able to buy a flat on her own.
Wow.
Like in Croydon.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that in a million years now. Like, it's just the price disparity between the wage and the house is just too wide. And she was able to do that really young. And then she bought another one, and then she bought another one. And so she was able to build up that. And house prices have jumped at extraordinary rates. That isn't really happening now. the bar, where you have to get in is so high. It's so impossible. And like I said, a lot of kids feel like if they don't do it, they're a failure. And that's another narrative that I really, really want to talk to parents about, because also we're in a digital nomadic world now. We weren't in the 80s and 90s. Like, you never really left your city, really.
True.
You were probably going to be in your job for life, because even those defined benefit, like final salary pension, still existed, things like that. Whereas now we're so digital, so digitally nomadic. Is it that important? If your daughter is coming to you and being like, I want to be a fashion designer, I want to be a fashion photographer and work all over the world, is it sensible to own a house at 21? Probably not, because you're not going to be there. You're going to be
That's a good point.
all over the world shooting models. Fantastic. That's a fantastic, successful career. But just because you don't own a house doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you've just done something different. So that would be something I would love. Sorry, I'll go back to what parents, like something for parents to think about is like, success has changed and owning a house isn't the only metric. And I wish young people realize that.
This episode of Money and Us is sponsored by XTB. I think a lot of people sit on the edge of investing for quite a while. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You know you probably should be doing something more with your money, but you're worried about getting it wrong. You feel like you need to understand everything before you start, so you wait. But one of the things I've learned over the years is that confidence doesn't usually come before action. It comes from taking small steps, learning as you go, and building understanding over time. And investing can be just like that too. It's not about trying to get rich quickly or making perfect decisions. It's about allowing your money to grow over the long term and developing your confidence along the way. That's where XTB can help. XTB offers access to a range of investment options alongside educational resources and tools designed to help you learn and make informed decisions as you go. If investing is something you've been meaning to explore but haven't quite known where to start, XTB could be a useful place to begin. To find out more, just click the link for XTB below this video. And remember, your capital is at risk when investing, and it's important to understand what you're investing in. Investment values can rise or fall. Always do your research. And I feel like we are still washing that out of the system of like thinking. Even in my generation, it's like, that it's not cut and dry like it was my parents' generation. And then you've got like people in their 30s, 20s, trickling right down to like, my kids, it's going to be even harder to get a house. Does it even make sense? Probably not, like you're saying. So I think it is a kind of cultural thing. I think it's quite a British thing as well to own your house.
It is, yeah. Europeans don't really, a lot of them just rent and they're very comfortable with it. But yeah, for us, it's like this metric. And also a lot of people, the very stark reality is actually the banks own your house.
True.
Like,
that's not a nice thought.
Sorry. But it's like,
it's true.
Yeah. Do you know what? And it's okay.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of people turn around and they're like, I bought a house, I'm on the property ladder. And I'm like, yeah, okay. You have, maybe 5, 10, 20% equity in that house if you're lucky. The rest of that is actually owned by someone else. And you're paying the bank a lot of money in interest to own that house over a very long period of time. Like, yeah, you bought it for 500,000, but you're not going to pay 500,000 for it. You're going to pay probably north of like 7 at the end. And we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And we give everyone a clap on the back to be like, you bought a house, well done. And it's like, okay, but what about, I'm going to make my fashion photographer up in my mind that's touring the world, but like her pictures are on the cover of Vogue or GQ or whatever. She doesn't own a house, but for some reason no one's clapping that. Maybe they would, hopefully. But like, they're like, oh, but she doesn't own a house. What a shame. What? Like, she's got investments, she's got pension, she's fine. That's different.
Speaking of which, because you mentioned there, like investments, pensions, all that sort of stuff. That's the key thing, isn't it? It's because it's like we've seen houses as the asset.
Yes.
In the UK, I think we've been very like, no, it's okay, I've got my house, that's my pension. That's my future, I'm sorted. Whereas with that kind of model breaking down for many, many people and it not really working and not able to get on the property ladder, we're not as well versed in other assets.
No.
So how do we shift that?
Yeah. Well, because the way to shift it, to be honest, is to understand that there are blockers, because stamp duty is one of the worst taxes in the UK because it stops people from moving. And what's happened is we've had this generation buying houses because they were fantastic assets. If you were in, if I bought a house when I was born, be laughing. But I didn't have
why
any
didn't
money.
you do that?
I know, honestly, I was
Crazy.
completely. What was I doing as a toddler? Absolutely. Sorry, a vision that just came to mind when I was like 4 years old. My mum woke me up on my birthday, and it was like the height of Britney, and I'd got a bike for my birthday, but also it was the height of Britney where she had like all those fountain, and I'd done that to my hair, and I had loads of little ponytails, and there's a picture of me in my parents' house with this bike, and I look nuts.
When you should have been buying a house.
Exactly, when I should have been
What
thinking
a
about my
nightmare.
pension.
Britney.
And all I could think about was Britney's hairstyle.
Britney.
Sorry. God, my tism really kicked in. So remind me, where are we?
Pensions, assets, houses.
Yeah, and basically what happens is they've grown into these houses and they've got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they've stuck. And what should happen when it comes to investing is you should start to decumulate. And that's what you do when you invest.
Yep.
You invest up to a period and then you start spending that money and you live on it. But the problem with houses is they get stuck, and like older people are getting stuck in these houses because it's actually becoming so expensive for them to leave that they are, and then the next generation can't get into them. And you've got like Mr. and Mrs. Smith sat in a 9-bedroom house that they don't need. And then you've got a family down the road where there's like 6 of them in a 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
And they can't move because and that's one of the biggest problems, I think, when it comes to the property market is stamp duty. I won't carry on talking about that, but and then it's just helping people understand that investing in pensions are alternatives to that.
Yeah.
And that we need to remember that there is also a decumulation phase. You are allowed to start spending your money. We spend a lot of time talking to kids and young people about accumulating their wealth. I think there's also a massive, like you do a great conversation with like 40s, 50s, and then you have to start talking to them about, and now start spending.
Yeah.
Like this is the whole point. Like you start spending that money. Because as we both know, inheritance tax is absolutely, what's the right word? Is not good.
That was it. That was a great choice.
Non-swear. And actually, the idea is that you don't really want to be hit with that. So like you decumulate.
Decumulation.
So yeah.
But is it all things that I think culturally we've not been taught, we don't learn, and so it's like all new info, and it's just a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I get your take on something? Because it just made me think of it when we were just talking there about Britney, actually, and enjoying life and the bike and not buying a house. Can you just tell me what you think about, especially 20s, about the conflict between putting money away for the future and living your life in your 20s, and what your kind of thoughts are around that? And how do we navigate that?
Yeah, I have some controversial thoughts sometimes where I'm like, your net worth is like your network. Really, at the beginning, you don't have a net worth, you're just existing. And I think your 20s are a brilliant time to make so many mistakes. Make all your mistakes in your 20s, because you've got your 30s, your 40s to fix them if you need to. And I think a lot of the problem I see sometimes is people wait too long into their 20s. I waited way too long. I didn't start my business until I was 28. I probably could have started it way earlier, but I waited because I was like, I have to look like a success first and then do it. So I had to qualify. I had to stay at my job for X amount of years. And actually, people don't care about you as much as you think they do. And I think my 20s, I wish someone had kept telling me that, because I was so aware of looking to everyone else and making sure I was doing the same as everyone else. And actually, I should have just kept making more and more mistakes and kept jumping a little bit more. Change, it can be good. So yeah, I think in our 20s, yes, if you can save something, save a small amount, because it could gives you freedom, but and invest a little bit if you can, but use that money to find out who you are.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I think, I wish I spent a lot of my 20s pretending to be someone that I thought other people wanted me to be. That sounds a bit deep, but it's true.
No, I relate. Yeah.
Yeah. I spent a lot of money staying in terms of value of my time as well. A lot of time in a job I hated, but because I worked at Vogue, it was my personality.
Yeah. And
then I spent a lot of time, playing around with the idea of Elent, because I was like, oh, but it has to be a success first before I launch it. Oh, what? Staying in relationships for a long time that weren't working, but you just sort of you just sort of you are that person, and you kind of pretend, and it's so exhausting. I wish I could have gone back to 24-year-old Abi and been like, if something is exhausting, it's probably a sign that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, a gym class is going to be tiring. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do
different
it.
Kind of tiring.
But it's a different, if it's starting to really impact your life, your body, your mental health, it's just wrong. Just walk away. Nothing should give you that much resistance. But in your 20s, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
Yeah. And even with the stuff that you started with at the beginning of the unemployment rates and things like that, it's like that kind of fear factor as well, layered on.
Yeah.
Of like, I just need to hold down a job. I need to get the income, which of
Yeah.
course you do. But but also you could really leapfrog if you do experiment and try things out.
Yeah.
You can.
Like, I think you also have to just back yourself a lot in your 20s, because my parents were so fearful of what I do now, i.e. when I said to them I was quitting my job as an accountant to run this business, they did not want me to do it. They kept saying no, not saying no, but they were like, it's up to you, but you know, it's very risky. You sure? Kept, you know, being like, oh, so-and-so's son now works at a bank. Why don't you look at that? So-and-so's, you know, daughter is now working for this financial company. Why don't you interview there? And I'm like, no, I back myself. Now they think what I do is great and they're very proud of me. But there was a long time I had to justify to everyone around me that what I was doing was a good idea. And I think sometimes, I just wish I could go back to younger Abby and be like, just back yourself a bit more. But I think we're constantly taught not to, which is such a shame.
Have you got better at that?
A little bit. I'm pretty good at making quicker decisions. And I just go, right, I'm just going to do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? But I bought that freedom for myself by setting myself up like financially and all of that. So I get that sometimes that maybe comes more easily to me because I have set myself up to be able to take more risks.
Yeah.
I'm pretty bad sometimes. I'll like the other day I've got a team called Magenta. It's over there. That's why I'm pointing over there. And I was like texting her at like 1:30 in the morning, being like, I failed. I can't do this. I've broken Instagram. Like I'm really terrible. None of our videos are getting views. What? Like that's it. I should just quit, basically.
I love that this still happens.
Well, exactly. So I will just be fully honest that like even in what I do now, and then I wake up in the morning and I basically will say to Magenta, I'm like, oh, maybe I overacted, actually. I think everything's fine. Don't worry.
Probably just needed a nap. Yeah.
So that does still happen. So I won't sit here and lie and be like, I have solved it. Because I haven't.
Yeah.
I'm just slightly better than I was in my 20s, I think.
Yeah. And so sometimes it just takes a while, doesn't it? And I think it's an ongoing thing. I think I thought that it would stop at some point where you just think, right, I've sorted it out. I've figured it out. I know what I'm doing now. I'm done.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't.
I know.
What would you say as somebody who has just literally jumped ship, started your own business? You're just so creative. You're like, like here, there, and everywhere. Somebody who's listening to this thinking, oh, I think I've left it too late. Like I've got this career. I don't really love it. I've always wanted to do this other thing, but I've left it too late. What would you say to them?
Well, it's those stats. Like Vera Wang didn't sell her first wedding dress till she was like 50, right? And you know,
50.
So I think it was something like that, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was. Maybe I need to check the stats, but like, there's so many incredible people. Like I said right at the beginning, millionaires. The average millionaire is 55. Like, you know, it's not normal to be under 35 and doing like being a millionaire. I'm not. I'm like, you know, it's okay to change, and like you will probably achieve more in a few amount of years than if you'd started way earlier, because you've got all of this knowledge. You know, for me, I had the accountancy qualification behind me, so no one could ever tell me that I didn't understand my numbers. Like, and actually, I think if I'd started like mid-20s without that, I would have constantly been pushing against myself, being like, you don't know the numbers, you've got to hire a finance person, you don't know the numbers, they're going to find you out as a fraud. But because I'm really hard on myself as a person anyway, and I'm just so grateful I have the ACA, to be honest, as like a backbone to keep falling back on and being like, no, come on, you did the 15 exams, you do know. And actually, for me, that was important. And so I would say to anyone, like, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you think you can do it, just go for it, because actually it's so important. We need more of you. We need, like, we don't need more. I think it's that Jimmy Carr quote where he was referring really to the education system in the UK, where like, you know, we're forced to take 10 exams at GCSEs, and like we might not be very good at English, but we're forced to take it. But you might be really good at physics, let's say. And he was saying, he was like, I don't want to force my child to then continue doing English when they're not very good at it. If they're an exceptional physicist, like we don't need more average English writers. We need exceptional physicians. And actually, I agree with that. Like we need more of people that are inspired by what they do. And so if you are inspired by something and you want to change, you want to do something, go do it. We don't need you to be average at your job now. We want you to be exceptional at what you want to do. And I wish I could just instill that in lots of young people as well as older people. I don't think there's any there's no perfect time to do it ever, really.
No.
You know,
like you say, that experience that you have is not wasted. It's like, I certainly found that it was just like, you undervalue your experience, and then when you do something new, you're like, oh, I've got all of that knowledge.
Do you know who are the worst for undervaluing their
Tell me.
experiences? Mothers. You constantly will tell me, you'll be like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, you guys are the queens of multitasking.
Yeah, that's true.
You multitask better than anyone I know. Mothers are so resilient. The things you know about a mother is that she is resilient, she's strong, and she can multitask. All exceptional qualities that you want in a team member that you work with. Like, they are going to do their job well because they know how to. They know how to negotiate because they negotiate with their kids on an hourly basis. They know how to multitask because they multitask on a daily basis, everything in their life. Like, they are exceptional right out the bat. And they are always the ones that go, oh, just a mum. I'm like, honestly, the higher I get up, the people I meet, the higher up their career. Sometimes I'm in rooms with like CEOs of pretty big companies. They're often old men. And you find out, I don't know why I'm whispering on a podcast, but you find out how unimpressive they are. And you think, I actually don't really get it. And then I'll speak to like one of my friends who's like a new mum. She's like, oh, I'm an absolute failure. I don't know anything. And I think, I've just watched you achieve more in 10 minutes than probably some of the CEOs of some of the largest banks in the world have achieved in weeks, because they don't have to multitask. They just sit in meetings and don't do a lot. So I hope that doesn't get me cancelled. Let's not clip that. But it's one of those where like, no, but I think that's the thing. Sometimes some of the people that I have to spend the most time convincing that they're really impressive are the ones that just, that push the most against me and be like, no. And I'm like, you're so impressive. Like, my best friend, she's having a baby. Yeah, I can say it. In September. And she's been made an ops director. She's so impressive. But honestly, the amount of times she has come to me, I've gone to her being like, right, let's do your investment portfolio. Let's do your investing. And then she's come to me now and be like, right, can we set up an investment platform for when my child's born? And I was like, no, not until we've done yours.
You do yours first.
And she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't need one. I'm like, yes, you do.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Yeah.
I hard agree about the mum thing. And I often think like, you want a mum on your team because she'll get like 10 times more done than the person who's working 6 hours and not getting anything done. She'll do it in 3 or she'll do it in 2. And I tell you something, like, I knew my brain chemistry changed when I'd wrangled toddlers. I was like, I genuinely was like, I can do anything. Like, I will sit in boardrooms now and I will sit there and go, I'm absolutely fine in this context, because I'm like, nothing compares to wrangling toddlers and like trying to get control back in your house when everyone's having a meltdown. You're like, I've got it, I've got this. I completely agree with you. And I think it's sad that we don't, some of the skills that are behind the scenes don't get valued as much publicly. And I think we need to do a better job at that. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about young people coming through. We've talked a little bit about housing. We've talked about, actually, do you know what I do want to ask you? Changing tack slightly, is I want to know whether you think the schooling system right now is okay for what we need for the future, or does it need to shift? And if so, how do you think we need to shift things?
It needs drastic change. I will counteract this with every teacher in the UK should be knighted because they are incredible at their job.
Agreed.
I go and teach and I am exhausted in like a few hours. I don't know how they do it all day long. They're amazing. However, the school system as it stands, and I speak to a lot of teachers on a daily basis who would probably agree with this, doesn't work. Like, it's not set up for today's society. We still, have tables that face the teacher like we did hundreds of years ago. We still do like maths, English and science, and that doesn't always work for everyone. There's not enough education around physical, like nutritional health, mental health, technology. AI is so prevalent and schools are still not able to like fit it in because there's too much time on oxbow lakes and tectonic plates and things that I've never had to experience again in my life, but I've never had to like learn about again. And there needs to be some reform. There really does. Like, it's not a system that's going to benefit the next generation. And actually, I think there's too much pressure as well. I personally think there's too much pressure on GCSEs. Like, you know, when you're 16, it's too young to be doing 11 exams and there's not enough spread out. It all just happens at once. And you put too much pressure on young minds to think that they are successes or failures.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not at 16. Because I wish I could have, again, sorry, I keep saying I wish I could go back to Abby, but like if I could go to a 16-year-old now, I'd be like, the one thing I can tell you is at 18, when you get those A-level results, those GCSE results will mean nothing. Like you won't, I honestly, God, don't know what my GCSE results are. And then when you've got a degree, no one cares what you got for A-levels. And then if you do a postgrad or whatever, no one cares what you got for your degree. And even like, or even if you don't do that, you just go and get a career. To be honest, after a few years, no one really cares where you went to uni. And at that time, the education system puts too much pressure on the next generation that the only success is going to university. The only success is, you know, this job. You know, if you're not an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, you have failed. Not true. You know, it's just, yeah, the education system in terms of the education being taught needs to change, but also the way it's taught. The exam situation doesn't work. It's too much pressure in a very short amount of time. All it does is show that if you are very good at memorizing things, you are a success. And if you're not, then you're a failure, which is not true. We've got AI. I don't need to memorize anything anymore.
Well, this is it, isn't it? It's massively changing things.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that we will all use AI all the time, and so therefore you don't need to remember anything. But I've noticed as I've got older, some of the skills that I got in trouble for at school are some of the skills that make me the most money. So actually, just saying.
Yeah.
Definitely not an education system that's set up for success right now.
Yeah. And I know this is probably, I don't know if I should say this publicly, but I do feel a little bit like some of the boundaries at school, some of the rules. I actually know that when the kids come home, they say, well, I'm going to get detention because of this, right?
Oh,
and I go, I kind of feel like I'm glad you pushed the boundary a little bit, because that rule, if you don't push that boundary in the real world when you get a job, you're going to fall behind because you didn't push that particular boundary.
Yeah.
It could be all kinds of different things. I'm not saying, and we definitely teach our kids to be very respectful at school. I'm sure their teachers would say it's not about not respecting people. It's about you have to understand the systems you're in, and you have to be able to maneuver, don't you, within those systems, and realize that some rules are hard and fast and other rules they need to be pushed.
100%.
They need to be like pushed out because they're not serving you and won't serve you if you're trying to make money, trying to work a job.
And also, they might not serve the people coming up behind you as well. It's important to speak up if you think something's wrong. Like I've said this a few times, actually. Maybe I said it on another podcast, but I said about when I was at school, in my last year of school, I was obsessed with being a prefect because I kept being told that, like, if you were a prefect, you would get into uni effectively.
Literally
that was how my brain
same.
went.
Yeah.
And so I was like working overtime in my AS level year to do like loads of fundraising, do loads of things that ticked boxed me becoming a prefect. And then they changed the rules and you couldn't apply unless you had certain grades at AS level. And typically I didn't have those grades and I was livid. I was so upset. I was like, this is so unfair. Like I felt like I've been swimming in a race where the person that was at the finish line knew that they were going to move the finish line as soon as I got there. And I basically went home. I was like, this is ridiculous. And my parents, because they don't have the traditional employee mentality, were like, well, just create a position. And I was like, you can't do that. They were like,
that.
Well, they were like, why not? And I was like, well, because you just can't. They were like, but did you ask? And I was like, well, no. You can't create your own positions. And then do you know what? It was honestly this epiphany in life when I went in and was like, well, I think there should be a marketing prefect. Also at this time I wanted to be in marketing. I've taken some career squiggles. And I was like, I would like to make a marketing prefect position that's like sole job is on like marketing the school and marketing charity work that we do. And they were like, okay, well, if you put a case together and you present it and then you apply for it, fine. And honestly, it was like this whole system that I'd built just crumbled. Well, this was it, because everything I'd ever stood for, which was that the rules are there and they make sense, just went, no, you could just make this stuff up. And it just all crumbled. And I was like, oh, this is all a lie. And then I made this position, because obviously, and then I made one for my friend, because my friend also got stressed over, like basically she was doing loads of stuff to get prefect and then she didn't get the grade. So I was like, right, you come in with me. And then I made it so that this position didn't have any grades and it was never allowed to. Like you didn't have to have AAB at AS level. And that was the rule. But you did have to do charity work, you did have And apparently it's the position still exists. But I remember at that time, it didn't. And there was so much resistance on it. And I remember the girls that were official prefects definitely used to like look down their nose that I was the like one I'd made up. But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Now, the girls that are there at the school now don't know that it was made up by me. They have no
Everything's
idea.
made up by someone.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And exactly. And that honestly gave me this sort of like ground altering impact on my life where I started to realize that all of this is just a case of just ask. The worst it's going to say is no. And I actually think that it was the worst thing they ever did, both the best and the worst thing they ever did for me, because actually I then went, well, everything's negotiable now. And so it created the monster.
It actually is, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, but schools don't want kids to know that.
Yeah.
I think, and also the world doesn't want adults to know that. And then when we do, it's dangerous.
But there's a stat, isn't there, about women are less likely to ask for a pay rise, but when they do, they're more likely to get a pay rise. So those that ask for a pay rise are more likely to get one. But women are less likely to do so in the first place.
They've waited too long.
And we don't get schooled in that, in asking for things and putting yourself out there and making things happen. And I know my brain unlocked when I realised it just the penny dropped at one point. I don't know when it was. That every single job ever has been made up by someone. Every business that has ever existed, somebody made up.
Yeah.
And we work in a made up industry right now. Like 10 years ago, no one was doing reels on social media, on TikTok.
Well, didn't we talk about this yesterday? Like, because I think when I did the payslip video.
Yes.
My very first like viral video was on a payslip.
Tell us about that quickly.
Well, because my very first like viral video on Instagram was I explained tax codes and your payslip. And it went nuts because it was like the first time anyone was ever talking about it. And I think it was because before finance content creators, you were there before me. There was so many finance content creators, but there was these kind of rules that were already there of like what you should and shouldn't talk about. And then I just went, why are we not talking about pay slips? And I think it was probably, the honest answer was boring. No one cares about it. No one wants to learn about it.
And then you came along with your nice hair.
Well, exactly. And
it wasn't boring anymore.
Honestly, even I thought it was boring when the video came out. And I was like, oh, fine. And then we posted it on like a Thursday afternoon. And I think the stars just all aligned. And suddenly everyone went, oh, I have a pay slip. Oh, I should. Oh, okay. Yeah. And it just went viral. Yeah. And I was at my friend's birthday party, at like birthday weekend. And I went to sleep on like a Thursday. And I had like, I think I'd got to 2,000 followers by that point. And then I woke up and I'd had 15. And the next day it was like 20. And then and I was like, what is going on? And then, yeah. And actually it made me laugh because now all of us as finance content creators often talk about pay slips and monthly budgeting and all of that. But that was just made up. Mm-hmm. Like, I just was like, well, maybe I'll talk about it, see what happens. Yeah. And it did all right. But I just think it's so true. Maybe that is maybe that's what you should title this, is everything's made up.
Everything is made up. But yeah, you're right. And it's I think one of the key things from that though is that it's not boring if it directly impacts your life. And you're basically connecting the dots with people in that video. I remember it and it being like, so you're saying if I actually go back on this, I could get money back from my tax that I've been paying out, that I shouldn't be paying out. That's not boring. Yeah. That's money back in my pocket and I'm very happy about that. So I think creativity is underrated. And I think that's a creative spin on something that has been traditionally very boring. And I think that's basically what we do now. And that's, a good thing. Yeah. Okay, I want to give people a few tips that are listening and thinking about their kids, thinking about the next generation coming through. And I actually saw a video you did really recently that I thought was so succinct and very helpful, just about like what to do if you're having a baby, or what to do if you're a parent, even if it's you've had your babies but you've never got on top of this stuff. There are like 4 things that every parent should do. Was it 4? Can you talk me through?
Oh, that's putting me on the spot. But you know what?
I am going to a little bit. Just go through some.
I'm going to create a document because, as you're probably aware, in your 30s, everyone starts having children. And so all of my friends are having babies now. And every time I go and see them, I'm like, I'll send you a document with what you need to do once you end up there. Because once you end up there, sorry, that's awful. Once you have your child. Because there is things I think parents just don't, well, I'm going to say forget, but no one's taught them. So I think one of the things is definitely once your child is born, don't forget to register for child benefit. So understanding that even if you are over that 100K threshold, which lots of people will find themselves in that position, obviously as wages rise, but taxes don't, you may have to pay it back and you can opt out. So if you're like, I don't want the money, you can register and then opt out because basically it gives you eligibility for your national insurance contributions towards your state pension. It also basically puts them on the register. So when they get to 16 or between 15 and 16, they get their national insurance number. So registering for child benefit if you are eligible for the actual benefit itself, it can backdate 3 months as well.
Nice.
So
tasty.
make
Lump
sure
sum.
you do that as soon as possible. Because obviously if they get 6 months, you can only go back 3 months. Next is I would review savings accounts for them. So for instance, you could set up a junior ISA. A junior ISA, you can put up to 9K per tax year per child into that. You can have it in cash or stocks and shares. They get access to that once they turn 18 though, so be really aware. You also have premium bonds, so you can have junior premium bonds. You can set these up, so can grandparents. These can be really great ideas for like birthdays and things like that, especially when they're super young and they don't know the difference between this red tractor and this green one, if I'm really honest, and you've got 17 of them. Then you've also got SIPs. So you can have a junior self-invested personal pension. Sounds ridiculous because they're not going to be able to touch that until they're in their 50s. But chances are you put a small amount in there, very young age, they are going to thank you when they're in their retirement because it's got such a long time to compound. Obviously, the major thing that overarches all of this is education. Educating them is probably the most important, and from a young age, really understanding, like we've said already, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and the education you want to give them. Because every family is different. I'm not saying, you might have a religious aspect to finance that you want to discuss, which is really important. You might just have a personal experience you want to talk about, but try not to let that bias your education as well.
So helpful. And I want to just end on sort of a slightly positive, because we've talked about a lot of the challenges people are facing right now. But I want to know what your hope is for the next generation and what you're seeing. Like, what are they doing better than we did?
I'm so proud of them. I don't have a child yet, but honestly, when I see them, I think they're so resilient. They've had so much in the last few years with like COVID and the change in workforce and AI that they don't realize how impressive they are. They don't realize the kind of access they have at their fingertips because of just being born in this generation, the changes that we're going to see. And I think they should be, one, very, very proud of themselves. Two, remember that obviously they are allowed to push against the boundaries. This world is changing and therefore they can change what that narrative looks like. I don't know if I'm going to see financial education on the curriculum in my career. Obviously it's my entire work. Like, honestly, it's my entire passion to see it happen, but maybe I won't. And it doesn't mean that they can't also keep pushing for it as well. And also I would say to them and about them is remember that like success isn't always monetary. Like my greatest success is my friendships. And I think that's something that I think the next generation know already. They've got very good at saying a lot of things in a short amount of words, like Gen Z and Gen A. And often they'll say things and I'm like, oh, you're actually very wise because you can say, I think, our generation, boomers, etc., are very bad at like waffling. And I think some of their greatest attributes is they're very good at just being to the point and also standing up for themselves and also getting into politics, which I really like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're seeing that trend?
Yeah, I am, because they know it's important now. But yeah, I'm just, on the whole, I'm very impressed by them. I never go into school where I'm not impressed by what they can do, which is why I keep doing it.
Oh, it's so good to hear.
But yeah, they are. And they're an attribute to all of their parents. Like I always say that when I go into schools, like, you can tell each kid and like what's going on in their world as well, just by who they are and like their kindness, which I think is really nice.
That is so nice. Glad to hear that. I really do. I know I said this earlier, but I just think everyone should have this on their shelf because it is like the thing you dip into and you want to dip into.
Yeah.
And no one remembers everything.
No, I think the cover could maybe be a bit more interesting because I did have a kid tell me. So it's become a little bit of a staple in schools. A lot of libraries and schools have it.
It's so good though.
Yeah, which I'm so proud of. But it was my love letter to everyone from an accountant, basically. It was everything I know about finance in a manual. But a kid did say to me that they thought it was, what did they think it was? They basically thought that it was like a university brochure or something, like because it just looked so boring on the front. And I was like,
don't undersell it. It's fantastic.
Well, no, but this was it. So in my head, I'm like, maybe it needs a little rejig on the cover, but we'll see. But honestly, the core parts of all of it should be quite evergreen. I've tried to write it quite evergreen, so
it certainly is.
Some of the numbers may change, but the majority of the context will stay the same. And it's basically meant to be that you can like dip in and out of chapters. and just take what you need. And also it spans so many generations, because I talk about, there is a whole chapter or a whole part in there about having a child and like what that looks like. But there's also a chapter in there about student loans and understanding your payslip and your first job. But yeah, this is my first, and hopefully very soon I'll be able to talk about my second.
Book number 2. I realised I didn't say, so everyone listening on audio, I just lifted up Abby's book and I was just like talking as if you can see. So if you didn't see that, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sure you got that from what we were saying. But yeah, it's really, really good. And I think it's like probably sitting in one of your lessons, isn't it? And sitting with you for a bit and just learning from you.
I did what's the word? Speech to text a lot of the book.
Yeah.
Because I'm so much better vocal than I am typing. And so, yeah, I did a lot of like speaking into it, and I tried to do that so that my voice came through as well.
That's important.
It is. And like, actually, like I said, I won't lie to you, there are some chapters that are very difficult to make fun.
Well, yes, but this is the challenge, isn't it?
We have to keep going, and it's so important.
It's
And I do you know what I love as well about all of us in our space is we've all got finance books. Well, not all of us, but most of us, like yours, and they all sit really perfectly with each other. Because like what I loved about Money Mentor is how, obviously with your book, is actually the kind of psychological elements that come into it and your experiences, which I love, and the stories as well, and like about your dad and anyway. And I actually think that they stack all really lovely, and they also represent who we are as people.
Right.
Like I think if you like stacked all of our books together, you'd be like, yeah, that's Anna as a book, that's Abby as a book.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I think my book sometimes is just very me, where it's like quite neurospicy, where it's like, I'm going to tell you everything.
Yeah, but that's good.
All at once.
That's what we need.
And
we
it's
need to know the stuff.
Well, exactly. So so that's
really,
why
really cool.
I do love it. It's why, it is your thing, isn't it, in the end? But yeah, I do want to.
It's so good.
Yeah, I hope everyone does enjoy it. You can also just listen to it as well. There is an audiobook on wherever you get your audiobooks, but also I'm pretty sure if you have Spotify Premium, you can listen for free.
Which I am a big fan of. Just doing things while you're listening to something really like that's doing you good. You're like, yes, this is a good use of my time. I'm going to ask you one more question to finish that I'm asking everybody. But while you're thinking of the answer, I'm just going to big you up a little bit more and tell people where they can find you. So my question is, what does wealth mean to you? And if you haven't followed Abi already, do find her on Instagram, Abi Foster, and her book's everywhere, so you can find it everywhere. But I'm also just want to say, I have seen your journey from not the start, but I've come in at some point, and it's an absolute joy to see everything unfolding for you. And you are the real deal. People that don't know you in person, I can testify that you are the real deal, and you are just as lovely behind the scenes. So it's really nice to see what you're doing, and I really am obviously cheering you on with the work you're doing with financial literacy in schools and education in schools, and just educating the whole world, it seems. But it's really, really brilliant. And it's just brilliant to see you doing it all. So tell me your answer. What does wealth mean to you?
Well, firstly, thank you, because this has been an absolute joy. You are a fantastic podcast host, honestly. And I did say this at the beginning. I was so concerned because we talk about too much behind the scenes. I was very concerned that I was going to forget the cameras were here.
Siri knows everything.
Well, exactly. And I was going to end up telling you about my dating life and my monthly food habits. Like, honestly, I was so concerned. But actually, it's been so lovely and so easy. And I think when it comes to what wealth means to me, I have thought about this in the past. For me, it's freedom. And I don't know if you've had that answer already from other people, because I think a lot of people do end up saying it. But for me, like, wealth is the ability... Like, ultimate wealth for me is the ability to say, like, F you. And in any capacity, to be able to walk away from something that I don't like, to walk away from someone I don't like, just to be able to go, I choose freedom, I'm saying no. Because for such a long time, I thought wealth was attributed to things, and that having a designer bag was wealth, or having a massive house was wealth. And not to sound too old, but the older I have got, the more I've realized that actually freedom is wealth. Like, you're buying yourself freedom, you're buying yourself time, that means the most to me as I've got older, because life can be really hard without money. And so it's I think it's naive of people to say things like money doesn't buy happiness. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, try living without it and see how happy you feel.
And like, you can't, and you can't buy more time, but what you can buy is the ability to say no to things that waste your time. And that is people, that's relationships, that's properties you don't actually want to live in, and now your money's stuck. That's jobs that you hate. They rob, all of those things rob you of so much time. And I wish I could go back to 24-year-old Abi and get her to say no quicker to things, because I knew so much at 25 that took me until my late 20s, early 30s to say no to. I should have done it sooner.
Wow, look at you now. Flying high. Thank you so much. It's great to speak with you, and let's do it again soon.
Of course.
Listening to this podcast, you'll notice that we cover a lot of different areas when it comes to money. But one thing I hear all the time is, how do I actually pull this together and apply it to my own finances? And that's why I wrote Money Mentor. This book takes all of these key ideas, from mindset to managing your money to growing it, and showing you how to apply them step by step in your real life, month to month. It's not about being perfect with money. It's about having a clear plan and knowing what to do next. Inside the book, you'll also get access to practical tools, including my own budgeting framework and additional resources to help you actually implement what you're learning. Because knowing what to do is one thing, but putting it into action is where everything starts to change. I've had so many messages from people saying that it has helped them to finally feel clear and more in control of their money. So if you're ready to feel more in control of your finances and build a system that actually works for you, you can access Money Mentor using the link below this episode.